In this video, we're going to explore the Bake Scan Settings dialog in greater detail, because if you happen to find that the default values in 3D Coat don't quite work for you, if you have some issues that crop up, then these particular settings or the options in this dialog can help you overcome those issues. So let's go ahead and go to the Retypo menu and try to merge for per pixel painting. And you can see the Bake Scan dialog appear here. One issue you may have at this stage is when you try to observe the inner cage to make adjustments here, you can't quite see through the object. You can see it where it's protruding outside the voxel object, and obviously this really is not what we want. So one way to counteract that is to ghost all your voxel layers before you get started. And you can also go straight to the Scan Settings dialog here. I set a hotkey for it. That way if I need to exit temporarily, I can do it and come right back easily. So you can see the outer shell, the inner shell, and sometimes these settings, default settings, might get you pretty close or may suffice if it's simple enough of an object. Okay, but in cases like this where you have sharp pointed teeth in areas of the model where you've got greater levels of polygonal density in areas like the corner of the lips, maybe inset areas of nostrils and things like that, you might have some issues. So anytime you have pointed areas, you probably want to consider maybe setting some zones that allow you to change these settings in a localized fashion. Yeah, now that I can see through it, I can go ahead and change this inner depth here to 2 and switch to preview outer shell. And I might make that 2 as well. And I just want to make sure that no parts of the voxel object are protruding through. So I might actually go down to 1.5 on this one. And there's a good possibility that this might work fine, but what I'm going to try to do is just go ahead and some of these areas that I think might cause some issues, I might go ahead and add a zone. But before I do that, I want to point out that if you hover over this section, you'll see a little pop-up, a little tooltip that explains these two major modes. This first, closest along normal mode, is for simple situations, whereas this next one, snap to outer surface, works a bit better in more complex type models, and also if you happen to have parts of your model that overlap. For example, like piping on a hero character's uniform. Also too, if you don't have enough polygons to actually make up that piping, okay, if it's sticking through the Retypo mesh, then you're going to need probably to use this second method here. It's a little bit better. Okay, this first one scans for the closest vertices along the normal, whereas this one looks for the furthest point along the normal. And I'm going to cancel that and go to 3D Coat's main page under the Community tab, Forum. Scroll down to the Tutorials and New Feature Demos section. There is a thread here for Happy Baking Guide. The PDF here is something Andrew created to give a little bit more information about what's going on under the hood, and he gives a diagram here that shows the differences between the two. Okay, and he also provides some tips in general for better baking. So definitely want to check that out. Okay, so let's go back to 3D Coat here. And yeah, I'll hit a little hotkey for this dialog. And I'll change it back to 1.5. Change it to 1.25. And what I'm going to do is try to identify areas where there might be some issues. For example, if I didn't have enough geometry here and I see something poking through, I don't at this stage, but if I did, I probably would want to add a zone here. And what I can do is right click, hover over an area of the model, and the size of my brush radius will dictate how large the zone is. So I can right click and drag to increase or decrease. I'll make it rather large so that it covers most of this talon or this claw here. Okay, I'm pick zone and then pick where I want to place it. I'll probably place it about close to midway. And I can preview the inner amount and change it here locally. So this is the global amount and this is the localized amount per sphere. I can change the radius numerically here if I want. I can make it 9. The inner depth is the one I'm previewing now, so let's make that 0.5. Looks good. And I can see I have a few issues here. So I'm going to add a zone. Going to switch to the wings UV map here. Hit my hotkey for the dialog. And then the inner amounts. Let's make it 0.3. 0.1. Add another zone here. Pick zone so I can place it. And I'll probably do the same. 0.1. And what I may do is go back, pick zone, and I can move it again if I need. This time, before I actually click on the object, I'm going to right click and drag to increase the size of the zone. And then I'll click on the object here. I'll go back to this one. Again, I can right click and drag to increase the size of the zone. Okay, let me do that. 0.2. Add a zone. Pick zone. And place it. 0.2. Add a zone. Pick zone. Same thing. 0.2. Okay, so you get the idea here, and we could do it for the teeth as well. So hit OK, switch to the teeth map here. And I spoke with Andrew about this, that hopefully he'll allow us to set these zones without having to switch between the UV maps, but currently I can't quite pick the area on another map until I step out and then select this UV map here in the top left. Hopefully he'll change that here shortly. Okay, so with that done, I'll hit my hotkey again. And as of this recording as well, make sure you don't hit cancel. Hit OK when you want to step out. It will memorize all your settings here. Okay, so add a zone. Just want to scale my brush down. And pick zone. And even after I click on the Pick Zone button here, I can still move the sphere around. I can right click and drag left and right to scale it, and then pick on the object. Okay, and I can change that inner depth into let's try 0.3. Okay, so I'll do one more for this tooth. Pick zone. Okay. 0.3. Add a zone. Pick zone for the tongue. Like that. Also 0.3. And so for demonstration purposes, I could continue on here, but I'll just stop and I'll hit OK. Unghost on my voxel objects here. Retopo. And now merge to per pixel painting, and it memorizes all my settings. Okay, preview outer shell. Looks fine. Okay. It's going to ask if I want to bake occlusion at this stage. When you're per pixel painting, 3D Coat gives you the option to do your occlusion baking here so that it can scan your voxel object for occlusion rather than later on in the texture painting process like you would with micro vertex, because with micro vertex you may do a lot of your sculpting at that stage using displacement painting or displacement sculpting. So you literally have vertices that are being displaced, whereas normal maps is just creating the illusion of detail or resolution. So I hope that makes sense to you. Okay. I'm going to choose to subdivide one time. And sometimes this will help your baking result because it gives it more geometry in these flat areas. Now you're not stuck with this subdivided amount. 3D Coat allows you to go ahead and subdivide, but it stores this original low poly version. It stores it in memory. It's still there. So when you go to export out to your application, you have the option to export that low poly mesh or this subdivided version here. So I'm going to keep UV, full UV set smoothing, and let's go with 2K maps here for demonstration purposes. Teeth, tongue, and eye. I might just make that 1K. And I'll go ahead and pause while it's calculating. Okay, we're ready now. I go into the paint room here. And we had one little small issue right here. So we might need to go back and add a zone in that area. But we look much improved on the back side here where we set those zones for these very, very thin areas here. So overall we look pretty good. Now if I want to go back and make another attempt, what we need to do is clear the object from the scene by going to the Objects panel. You also happen to have the Materials panel where you can hide individual parts, basically your UV surfaces. Okay, you can also lock them and even delete them. In this case, we can just delete the entire model here in the Object section. If you do not see this in your user interface, you want to go to the Windows menu, Pop-ups, select Sub-Objects, and you can dock it wherever you prefer. And then when you come back to 3D Coat each time, it'll still remain here. Okay, so let's go ahead and clear that. It's going to ask, are you sure about that? In this case, yes. The next step is to clear all these paint layers. Now, used to, we'd have to do this one by one. Now we have this option here at the very end of our icons that allows us to delete all unused layers. So we're ready to go back to the retopple room. Okay, and let's go back to our bake scan settings. In this case, I can probably just go ahead and start the merging process here. I'm going to switch modes here, snap to outer surface, and let's see if that alone will give us a better result. I'll choose bake occlusion again. I'll keep the same settings up top here, but change the texture map sizes down below. And click OK. And I'll pause while it calculates again. Okay, so we're ready to go back to the paint room. We still have that little issue, so that really did not help us a lot by switching to that second mode. But again, overall, I think we're in pretty good shape. Okay, we might have a little issue here on the very end. So again, I will just go to Objects, delete that, clear layer panel here, go back to the retopple room, bring up my scan settings dialog, and I'm going to add a zone. Now I could just bump up the outer depth here. I could bring that up to 1.5, and to be just to be on the safe side, I could go ahead and add a zone. I'm going to hit OK. Make sure that I'm on this particular UV map. Hit my hotkey for the dialog. Pick the zone. Before I click to pin it to this particular area, I can right click and drag again to scale the size. Or oops, I'm sorry. Click here. Or I could just hover over an empty area here on the body. Make sure you don't hover outside, because 3D Coat assumes you want to navigate at this point. Hover over an object, right click and drag. Okay, and now you can scale this way as well before you ever pick the zone. So I'll pick, and now I can move it and pick the location, and it's panned right there. Alright, so let me change the value here. I also want to point out that once you change the value, we're looking at the outer shell, so let's change that to 2.3 maybe. 2.5. There we go. And so now you can actually interactively move this zone and see how it's going to affect the cage. Okay, so let me put one there. I could put one here as well. So just to demonstrate that again, I'll add another one here. Add zone. Could scale it up before I ever click pick zone. So now this is about the size I want to use. And then I could change this outer value in 2.5 and pick zone and place it. Okay. And again, I can just move that around interactively. And click it. So I think we're done here. So again, just remember, when you add a zone, click add a zone, and then pick zone to place it. So we'll hit OK. Merge for per pixel painting. Hit OK. OK. Change the values here and proceed. Okay, so we're done baking. Go back to the paint room, and that appeared to solve our issue here that we had. Okay, with that, we will bring this demonstration to a conclusion. I hope it was helpful for you. So thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more.